LA now. With a specialized degree in climate, Chief Meteorologist and Climate Specialist Jeff Baradelli is pioneering the way we look at climate and extreme weather. Welcome to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by ArmorView Window and Door.
Insane in the membrane. No, I'm not talking about myself or Val. I'm talking about this crazy weather pattern that we've seen the past couple of days and we continue to see across the Southeast and now into the Atlantic Ocean. Ireland is about to be hit with the strongest storm on record in terms of pressure, wind gusts over 100 miles an hour. It's all connected, by the way, to what we've seen this week along the Gulf Coast. Hello, everybody. I am Chief Meteorologist and Climate Specialist Jeff Baradelli. Let me bring in my special guest, who's always special and always my guest. This is Val Simpson. She is climate curious. Hey, Val.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jeff. You had me laughing there for a minute when you were like insane in the membrane. I thought you were going to start singing an 80s song.
Yeah, I don't have that much skill.
But anyway, I'm excited about this episode because we are going to be talking about something that really, especially for Floridians, it kind of has us in, I don't know, we love talking about snow. In a tailspin because we love talking about snow. It's not something that we see that often and probably in a lifetime for some of us. Yeah. But anyway, I want to remind everybody that one of the primary reasons why I'm here is to ask Jeff questions, your questions. So if you are on Facebook, I'm going to be watching all the Facebook questions coming in right now, and I'll forward them to Jeff. We'll be able to discuss those. And then also any topic that Jeff goes on a rampage about, we have our trusty buzzer here with us. We're going to be buzzing him throughout the episode.
All right. With that said, let's bring up the full-on radar view of this crazy storm. Now, this is not a current radar view. This was the storm as it made its way through. What I find interesting is the snow wasn't limited to the Gulf Coast. It actually, look at this, it fell like 100 miles south of land, deep into the Gulf. So this was really a once-in-a-lifetime historic event. Areas in and around Pensacola had close to 10 inches of snow, Val. So that more than doubles the state record, which was also in Milton, Florida, just north of Pensacola.
Yeah, so what was that record?
4 inches. So we had 10 inches, 4 inches of the record. And by the way, someone wrote, a meteorologist that I respect, and so I believe it, that if you added up all the snow over the last 100 years in Pensacola, you wouldn't get to 9.8 inches of snow. So it was more snow in one day than they had combined in the last 100 years. Just to give an idea of how crazy that was. So I'm going to actually advance this graphic because I want to show you the amount of snow that we ended up having. And I'll also put this graphic up full for you. So 9.8 inches was the highest official total, although there were plenty of other totals in like Louisiana where there was close to a foot of snow. I think it was one place, could have been Alabama. Could have been Louisiana that got close to 13 inches. And by the way, one other thing I should mention, Val, is that because of the snowpack, we talked about this in the Weather Center yesterday, so let me bring you back on camera. Snowpack makes temperatures much colder at night. So once the sky's clear and there's a snowpack left over and it's not too windy, if it's not too windy in the morning, temperatures will dive like 10 degrees less than what the computer models say. Right. 10 degrees less than expected. So we ended up with all-time record lows in southern Louisiana. Lafayette got to, it was 4 degrees or something like that. And New Iberia got to 2 degrees Fahrenheit. This is in southern Louisiana, right up against the Gulf Coast. So this is historic in many ways, Val.
Right. Not only because of the snow, also the temperatures. I mean, for us, too, I mean, our temperatures were, this morning we woke up at 39 degrees here in the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah, so the polar vortex is out of whack, if you will. So in the stratosphere, we have something called a stratospheric polar vortex stretching. So essentially when it stretches, it can sometimes, now the stratosphere is above the troposphere, Val. I know I'm going to get buzzed on this. The stratosphere is above the troposphere. The troposphere is where all the clouds are. It's where all the weather takes place. Just above it is something called the stratosphere. And every once in a while, when there's enough of a perturbation, enough of a disturbance in the force, if you will, in the stratosphere, that'll percolate its way down into the troposphere. So we often will see these disruptions of the polar vortex in the stratosphere make their way down into the troposphere where we live and affect the polar vortex and affect the jet stream. So that's one thing that's going on. That polar vortex is way to the south, and it's going to be way to the south through Saturday morning. So for here in the Bay Area, we were 39 this morning. Yeah. We're probably forecasting something like 30. I haven't done the forecast yet, but 37 tomorrow morning, and then probably 34 or so on Saturday morning. That's Tampa. You get like 10 miles outside of Tampa, and temperatures will be below freezing. Brandon may be freezing. Plant City likely to be freezing. Yeah. And north of that, we're talking 20s on the Nature Coast for Friday and Saturday morning, so we have a freeze warning in effect.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. I mean, the cold temperatures are something that we, I don't know, that we saw here and that we're not liking it. It's been a week now. Where is the sun, Jeff? We miss it.
It's going to enter the picture starting tomorrow. Today it's been a bad, I could say crappy on the web, right?
I think you can.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you can.
It's been
you can
just
get away with that.
Gloomy, raw, crappy day, misty,
miserable,
rainy, and cold. We've been basically in the 40s all day. In fact, hey, Rebecca, what's the temperature now? 45. So our record cold maximum today is 52.
Yeah. No,
so we're never going to get to 52 today.
I don't even like waking up with 45 as our morning temps.
Yeah, I know. Believe me, no one wants to even walk outside. Yesterday we got to 46. So that broke our record cold maximum temperature, which was 49. Yeah. So it was the coldest it's ever been during the day. And then, and by the way, we were 25 degrees below normal yesterday. It looks like we're headed to 25 degrees below normal again today. Also another record low maximum temperature. So this is historic. All right, Val, so let's talk about what else is going on. I want to bring this graphic up right here, and I want to first credit Ben Knoll. He's a great climatologist, meteorologist on Twitter. And he posted this, and what it basically shows is, first of all, to get your bearings, you can see the United States right in the middle of that. That was a couple of days ago when all that snow was happening. And if you notice, there's a big blue bullseye across the United States.
Yeah.
That shows where we were significantly below normal. So almost the whole U.S. was bright blue, meaning well below normal temperatures. But if you look at the rest of the world, no one was near as cold as that. Okay, we were by far the coldest spot relative. Not the coldest spot. It was still colder at the North Pole.
Yeah.
It just was, relatively speaking, relative to normal, we were the coldest spot, Val. All right. But also notice, Val, see all that red up in Alaska and in the Arctic Circle? It's all red, blood red up there. Well, that's what's happening up there. It is abnormally warm. Now, it's not warm. It's just much warmer than it should be.
Okay.
So when you get it being so warm in the Arctic, the end result of that is it has to the cold has to be somewhere, right? During the wintertime, cold has to exist somewhere.
Right.
So what happens is it displays, it's almost like warm air moves in and it pushes the cold air out. And so it pushed the cold air into the United States. So actually it was very warm in the Arctic. And would you believe, Val, the Earth the past couple of days has been the warmest it has ever been for this time in January. So on average, planet Earth is record hot.
Yeah.
While we experience record cold.
Right. So what you're trying to, so what I'm getting, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that these historic snowstorms that we had here in the South are actually due and are associated with climate change.
Maybe not.
Because we're warmer everywhere else. The warm air pushed the cold air onto us. So is that a thing?
This thing has to be studied a little bit more, but there's something called Arctic amplification. So the Arctic, over the long term, because of climate change, is warming faster than the rest of the globe, at like 3 to 4 times the average pace of the globe. And so oftentimes we'll see that once it gets really warm, warmer than normal in the Arctic this time of year, or really during the spring too, and into the summer, it will displace cold air further south. But there's been a lot of research on this. Some people have found a link between Arctic amplification and a tendency for some types of cold air outbreaks in the U.S., but it's definitely not an A to B, and it needs to be studied a lot more. This is one of the most complicated aspects of climate research right now, is trying to figure out how the jet stream is going to change based upon patterns of warming on Earth. We don't know for certain, but what I can tell you is a couple things. Having that much warm air in the Arctic does make it more likely that we would have cold air outbreaks in the U.S. and crazy snowstorms in the Deep South.
Wow.
But I can't say for sure that it links to climate change.
Okay.
Right?
Okay,
but
I see.
It probably does. We just haven't figured out, in most of the research hasn't quantified exactly how that happens yet.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, believe it or not, even with all that cold air across the United States, the Gulf of Mexico, before the snowstorm hit, Central and Western Gulf was about 5 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than normal. Right? So if you have all this extra warm water, that supplies extra moisture to the storm. So this storm would have happened regardless of the warmer Gulf. But the warmer Gulf likely added a couple of extra inches of snow. It wouldn't have snowed as hard, is what I'm saying. It probably, Look, I'm going to take a guess and say it still would have snowed 6 inches in Pensacola, maybe 7, but it wouldn't have snowed 9 or 10. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The amount, the accumulation amount.
Well, we've been seeing that in the Northeast United States also. So we haven't had any big storms lately in New York City. But going back 5, 10 plus years, there were huge storms, snowier than in the past.
Right.
And the general consensus is because water temperatures are so warm off the coast, as long as it's warm and as long as it's cold enough to snow, then that snow has been amplified and heavier because of the extra energy and extra moisture sitting off of the coast because of those warmer Atlantic water temperatures. The Gulf Stream's warmed up.
Right. I see. Okay, very interesting. Good deal. And now I do want to touch on that jet stream because I feel that it's stronger than normal, stronger than usual. We're seeing a lot of things that are very historic or unusual, to say the least.
So when you have kind of an extreme weather pattern, you get a lot of resultant extreme weather when you have this extreme climate pattern. So remember, we started out last week with insane fires in Los Angeles.
Right.
That was due to the cold weather being in the east and the type of jet stream pattern that we have across the U.S. And by the way, earlier this week, once again, we had gusts to 80, 90 miles an hour in Southern California. And that's because of this jet stream pattern pushing those winds over. You see that strong jet stream around Las Vegas and California? That jet, when it hits the mountains, that wind is accelerated down the mountain chain. So it's this jet stream pattern, and this is what we have now, but it's been different over the past 3 weeks, but generally it's been on average similar.
Yeah.
Okay. So with those strong jets coming down off the Sierra Nevada and then, and out of the Continental Divide area, it's been accelerating winds into Southern California. Plus, by the way, it hasn't rained in 8 months there. But that same jet that was over us that caused that wicked, the crazy snowstorm and the cold air outbreak, well, that's accelerated into the Atlantic right now. And we've had a 240 mile an hour jet stream in the Atlantic.
Wow,
it's not a record breaking jet stream, but it's very strong. In fact, we had a flight, one of the what do they say? The
Atlantic.
The cross Atlantic flights. I forget for whatever reason, I can't come up with the exact word. Transatlantic. Sorry, I said cross Atlantic. Transatlantic flights. Was powered at over 800 miles an hour 2 days ago.
Wow.
Just to give you an idea of how strong, and that's fast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not record fast, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
So, Val, this jet stream, let me bring this back up. And the reason why people might be wondering why we're talking about it, well, that is about to power the strongest storm on record that Ireland has ever seen tonight.
Wow.
There is going to be an area of low pressure that's going to form under this. It's going to be the pressure is going to be 936 millibars, which is the record lowest pressure in Ireland, in this particular part of Ireland where the storm is hitting. You can see that L right there over Ireland. I have one more graphic, I think, in this sequence.
So what kind of a storm? What does this mean for that area?
Wind and rain storm, but the models are showing gusts of over 120 miles an hour over the water.
We're talking hurricane force.
Which means they're going to see wind gusts like along the coast near Limerick in Ireland, so the west coast, west of Dublin.
Yeah.
They're going to see some wind gusts over 100 miles an hour. This could very well be a storm of record for Ireland. And if you've been paying attention now, you know how it's all connected.
Right.
Our weather and this polar vortex and this blocking, this significant block. Let me bring the blocking back up because I was showing it to you with the jet stream, but I never actually explained it.
Let's see it.
It's part of this extra warming that's happening in the Arctic.
Yeah.
Okay. We have this strong blocking pattern. You can see that area of low pressure and that area of high pressure up near Greenland. Those two immovable objects are kind of focusing the wind, almost like squeezing a toothpaste tube, and you're squeezing the wind through, kind of like you're squeezing those winds together.
I see it.
And so that's powering what is going to be one of the strongest storms that Ireland's ever seen. That's going to be overnight tonight. So
wind and rain, heavy winds, hurricane strength winds.
Hurricane strength winds, likely going to see those winds gust to about 120, 130 miles an hour offshore.
Let's hope that they're taking the precautions necessary to stay safe.
Those white shades, those are gusts over 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
So with all that said, we covered a lot of ground. I'm curious now if we have any questions or if you have any questions.
I have a question. What is it going to take for this jet stream to lift back north?
Just getting back to it, usually these things run their course.
Okay.
It's kind of like having a virus. You can't really get rid of
like
it.
my cold?
You're cold, right? You're cold. You can't.
10 days. Yeah.
You can't take anything, get rid of it, but it just runs its course.
Okay.
So weather patterns run their course, and this is about to run its course. You'll notice that starting next week, our temperatures here in the Bay Area will be in the 70s. I haven't looked that deeply, but I know the weather pattern is breaking down across the North Atlantic, which likely means we're in a transitional phase, and in the next 2 weeks, we'll be back to what is a more typical, normal, less extreme weather pattern across the Northern Hemisphere, because this has truly been, as you can see, a hemispheric
absolutely.
Weather pattern
having a lot
extreme.
of repercussions.
That's right.
We do have a lot of comments.
Sure.
Let's see. I'm going to start with Maribel Summers. She says that it was an Arctic cold front that dipped down south, I'm guessing. This is insane and a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I guess she's talking about the snowstorm and the snow accumulation.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I can't, Val, we talked about it leading up like 5 days before the event. Right?
Yeah.
We sit next to each other.
Yeah, we did.
We talked about this event. The models did pretty well.
Yeah.
They showed this days ahead of time. I think there were a lot of meteorologists who were like, I'll believe it when I see it. Because it's so, like, they used to tell us in school when I went to college, I think it was 80 years ago, they used to say, don't ever forecast records. That was the rule of thumb that our professors would tell us. Don't ever forecast records because records never happen. Yeah. But records are happening a lot more often now, right? We're seeing these stronger hurricanes. We're seeing these heat waves that are giving us crazy. So now I'm not shy about forecasting records, and I'm also not shy about looking at extreme situations on the forecast models and being like, that can happen, and not downplaying it.
Right.
So this is kind of what I think in many ways we expected. I think it overperformed a little bit. But I think that some of the models did, in fact, show 6, 7, 8 inches of snow in New Orleans. They ended up getting a little bit more, close to 10 inches.
Yes. Also, what's going on in the Gulf that we're seeing all these extremes? During hurricane season, our colleague Rebecca had a graphic yesterday that she created where she was showing that we had a very active hurricane season in the Gulf. And then now we're seeing all this snow affecting the Gulf area.
Yeah.
Is that a coincidence? What's going on?
I mean, the intensity of the extreme weather, the hurricanes and the snowstorm, are likely related to the water temperatures in the Gulf to some degree. So the water temperatures being hotter than normal, even though it's been cold this January, definitely contribute to what I would say are more intense storms. But all those same hurricanes would have happened even if the Gulf wasn't that warm. And this snowstorm and this jet stream dip into the Gulf would have happened even if the Gulf wasn't warm. So it's bad luck. I mean, it's just
is that what it is?
It's either cyclical or bad luck, but it's
we
not.
need a break.
At some point, we will get a break, and somebody else is going to get hit with.
I think the east coast of Florida is due for something.
Well, great. I'm sure they love you. I'm sure they love. I'm sure they
don't hate people from the East Coast. I love the East Coast of Florida.
But at some point, the pattern's going to move, and Houston's going to get hit 5 times, or Charleston's going to get hit 5 times, or Miami's going to keep getting. That's just the way things are in weather. So I can't say that.
Cyclical.
I don't think that the Gulf is like a magnet attracting bad energy, bad juju.
That's
juju?
That's what it feels like.
Call it?
Yeah,
juju?
that's juju. Yeah, good.
Bad juju.
It's just funny hearing you say that. We do have there's an interesting conversation going on with some of the folks here in the comments. I cannot repeat some of the things that are being said, but I'm going to continue to move on. Oh, here's something from Steve DiTomaso. He says, "Hey Jeff, Florida actually had 3, if not all 4 of the seasons in one day. Snow in the northern Florida to
it was like warm in Miami,
and then semi-summer weather in central and south Florida."
Yeah, no, it was because it was like a 50-degree temperature spread or something across the state at one point.
Yeah.
So that's look, we don't often see this, but if you go north, they see, they often see like several seasons in one day. Because temperatures will drop so fast behind Arctic fronts. That's what Arctic fronts will do. Listen, if you take Arctic air in the teens and 20s and you put it over water temperatures that are in the 60s and 70s, something's going to happen, right? That's like TNT.
Right.
It's combustible.
Dynamite.
And that's what happens.
For sure.
Yeah.
So for the local folks that are listening right now, what can they expect for Gasparilla? Let's talk about that.
That's a great question. So unfortunately, this jet stream will remain pretty far south for about Friday or so, and even into Saturday, actually. So we're going to bottom. Our coldest morning all winter is going to be Saturday morning. We're going to be in the 20s across all of Citrus, all of Hernando, and parts of Pasco.
Oh, our poor Nature Coast people.
And I think we're going to be in the low 30s in northern Hillsborough and even inland parts of places just away from the water in Pinellas. And Polk County, 32, 33, 34. And then everybody south of the Bay, it's going to be a couple of degrees warmer, but it's still going to be in the mid-30s. So that will be and there's a freeze warning in effect for tonight and tomorrow morning, but it's going to be even colder, I think, for many people on Saturday morning.
Pirates, bundle up.
Yeah, but the good news is that it's going to be, I think, decently sunny. Okay. So we should briefly get to 60.
Okay,
but
we'll take it.
But leading up to that, at 11 a.m., it's going to be in the upper 40s. At noon, it's going to be in the low 50s.
Will it be
at
windy?
1 p.m., it'll be in the mid 50s. So it's most people who are out at Gasparilla are out there for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
If you're out there for 3 hours in the 50s, which is the majority of the time, luckily, our blood is kind of used to it because it's been cold for like the past week and especially really over the past 3 weeks. But I still think that if you're out there for all those hours and it gets a little breezy or whatever, it's going to be cold. So I would say wear a nice Florida winter jacket or something just to keep yourself warm.
Very good. Well, shout out to Steve DiTomaso, who was sending me his correction on what he typed up. He was like, sorry, I meant to say fall. All good. Thank you, Steve. Wait, he said something else right now. He said, we had exactly 32 degrees on Christmas Day 2 years ago for 4 hours. I know this because I took the snapshot on my screen and saved the picture showing Largo at 32 degrees.
Yeah, he's 100% right. It's funny that you remember that, but yeah, between like the 24th and 26th or something was the last time it was as cold as it is right now. Because last winter wasn't very cold at all. It was the winter before that was. Yeah. So does that mean we're out of time, Val?
We are. Our timer just went off. So yes. We are out of time for this one.
All right. Well, this was a really interesting week for weather weenies, weather dorks, weather geeks, people like myself and Val, and for a lot of people just reveling in. You see the pictures of New Orleans. You see people skating playing ice hockey on the streets, or people in Pensacola sledding down hills, in Tallahassee.
Snow on the beach.
I mean, you don't get this too often. So being that this has been a novelty, I think everybody's taken it. I mean, instead of it being a negative, it's generally been a positive. People have been happy. It's been quite an experience for people to watch, especially when you can do it from home.
So true.
But I'm ready to kiss goodbye to the cold weather and bring the mild Florida weather back in. That's why we moved here, right?
Yeah. Well said.
All right, everyone. Thanks very much for tuning into the Climate Classroom, and we will see you again next week.
Watch or listen to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by Armor View Window and Door on WFLA social media platforms, and find Jeff's climate reports on WFLA.com.